Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, host of the VentureFizz podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 362, and today's guest is Alice Pomponio, Managing Director at BrightEdge, the investing arm of the American Cancer Society. Venture capital and private equity investors are always working on meaningful initiatives in terms of building great companies with the hope of gaining a meaningful return for investors. However, the role that Alice plays in the world of investing into startups is very different. As the innovation, impact investment, and venture capital arm of the American Cancer Society, BrightEdge propels groundbreaking patient-centric solutions by accelerating ACS's mission to advance science, reduce disparities, and promote healthcare sustainability. All of the investments from BrightEdge have a common goal, and that is to fight for a world without cancer. On top of this incredibly important mission is how the firm operates, where the financial returns are reinvested back into the fund or are returned to the American Cancer Society to build a diversified and sustainable source of funding for the organization. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics, like the platform shift to AI and its potential impact on cancer research, Alice's background and how cancer has affected her family, plus a walk through her career in the biotech and pharmaceutical industry, the details of the firm's proprietary cancer impact investment framework, sample portfolio companies and the overall impact that BrightEdge has made, how BrightEdge is helping to advance health equity and increase representation for underserved populations, and so much more. And now a brief word from our podcast sponsor, Silicon Valley Bank. I'm excited to share that this podcast is brought to you by one of the strongest longtime supporters of the local startup ecosystem, that being Silicon Valley Bank, a division of First Citizens Bank. SVB serves innovative tech, healthcare, and life sciences companies, including 60% of CNBC's Disruptor 50 list, 72% of Forbes Cloud 100 list, and 48% of Forbes AI 50 list companies. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Alice. Alice, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, man, I'm so excited to talk to you. A lot of investors may be thesis driven, fintech and all these other meaningful industries, clean tech. But, the role that you play and the thesis of what you're focused on as an investor with BrightEdge as part of the American Cancer Society, of investing in companies that are ultimately leading to hopefully someday a cure of cancer. I can't think of anything more meaningful than that. So when I had the opportunity to speak to you, it was a no-brainer.
Well, thanks. I mean, cancer sadly has impacted so many people in so many ways. For every cancer case, there sadly a cancer death, there's 9 orphans, right? So there's family members, there's spouses, there's even the care team at the hospital. There's all of those. So the ripple effect is real. And show me one person who hasn't been some way affected by cancer. So the appetite for progress in this space is real, it's genuine, and it's not limited to people who, are professionals in this space, right? Everybody wants to be able to see healthcare costs improve, R&D be more productive, that patients have more say in their care. So there's a lot of innovation that we can be backing and actually addressing the market failures in cancer health equity that BrightEdge, has the ability to deliver on because of us being part of the American Cancer Society.
Well, I obviously want to get into, your background story and obviously all the great work you're doing with BrightEdge. But before we get into that, I thought it'd be helpful because I feel like, we're obviously at this platform shift of AI. And one of the major benefits that I see from AI is in medicine. Things like helping to cure cancer, personalized medicine. So you're seeing this from the front lines. Like, what are you seeing out there as it relates to the advanced use of AI today?
Yeah, it's a really timely topic and it's pretty pervasive and provocative, I would say. There's no question that AI has the opportunity as well as the risk, right, associated with it. For us, because we are patient-centered investors, American Cancer Society's mission is to end cancer as we know it for everyone. That's our North Star. And so we absolutely want AI to keep people in the center. And so in areas where it's not yet um, learned or masterful in fully representing the people-centered approach, we would actually say, hold on, let's do a little bit more thinking and learning. Meanwhile, in areas of like workforce productivity, in drug development, in making, cancer care have less friction. I think there's lots of opportunities for AI to be immediately applied. And so, we, for example, have invested in a few companies that utilize AI, whether they develop AI, that's also a question, like who really develops the AI? It kind of develops itself. But we invested in a company that uses AI ML to review chest x-rays and scans to better diagnose, detect lung cancer and breast cancer. And that could be tremendously enabling for patients in rural geographies where they don't have access to centers of excellence, they don't have access to those centers, or even the technologists and the skill set of providers to be able to interpret those scans. That would be an example of where AI is actually helping patients access and making cancer care more equitable. And so we're excited about more applications like that.
And again, I want to talk about your background, but I have so many questions. So, uh, obviously, detecting cancer early is so critical. So, are there new ways of helping screen or test for that early detection?
There's so much data that shows, right, that if we can catch cancer earlier, we have such better outcomes because obviously, you can operate on it, you can have more time on treatment, more treatment choices, and so catching cancer early, screening, early detection technologies are vital. And this is an area where I would say the market has not really been as favorable because everyone's chasing the cure, everyone's chasing the blockbuster drug. And so those technologies have been, less in focus. And also the market and the business model around them are trickier, like who pays for wellness, who pays for prevention. But BrightEdge, one of the things I'm really excited about is that we have diversified our portfolio. So we invest in seed Series A companies. And going back to American Cancer Society's mission of ending cancers, we know it for everyone, that means we should be just as excited about early detection, diagnostics, treatment, and survivorhood. So we've invested in several companies that are developing technologies for colorectal cancer screening, for lung cancer screening, and then one company in particular, Mercy Bioanalytics, is developing a blood-based test for ovarian cancer screening, and that's a really terrible, terrible diagnosis to receive because 80% of patients who receive the diagnosis, usually it's very, very late. Like, you know, almost to the point where it's a death sentence. And so this would allow, so many more women to be able to monitor their risk for disease and be empowered. So that's just an example of where we're excited about early cancer detection. And if that works, right, just like if our public health guidelines are adhered to and that works and people catch cancer early, then we also need a whole wave of therapeutics that are going to be able to address cancers at their earliest stage as well. And actually, most of the therapeutics that are being developed now, especially the personalized ones, are ones that are third, fourth line. So they're after patients have failed, and this would be the sort of last treatment option that they have. So we need to also incent and motivate manufacturers to be looking at cancers at the earlier stages. What would be the types of treatments we need to develop should screening and detection technologies be more widely adopted and we get ahead of the curve?
Got it. Okay. Well, hopefully there's a lot going on that's gonna, push the rock forward here because it's just obviously like you said, it affects everybody from one family member, friend, associate, or personally. So, all right, well, let's rewind the clock. So, where did you grow up? What were you like as a child?
Oh, yeah, so I'm first generation American born. My family immigrated here from Taiwan, and they'd been in Taiwan for many generations prior to that. So my grandparents went to university in Japan, and my parents had come initially for education and would planned to return, but ended up staying. So basically moved around in search of the American dream. I spent most of my childhood in Texas and California, and then have been in Boston for the last 33 years.
And then you studied biology and English lit at MIT, right? So what brought you to studying those majors?
Yeah, I thought I would go into medicine. That was something that a dutiful, first generation daughter would do. But just found that I really got more interested in the issues than the science itself. And it was right around the time when genetic engineering was starting, or even just mapping the human genome, then sequencing the human genome. But I probably always had a liberal arts gene in me that didn't get pronounced until I was very fortunate. I was an ambassadorial scholar to the UK, what are now known as the Rotary Peace Fellows. And that was life-changing. It just exposed me to a different culture, um, a whole new set of issues. And then Dolly was cloned. And so I pivoted actually to science policy as a result, and then learned my health policy on the job once I entered biotech early on in my career. So, my career's kind of journeyed with both the state of the science and then the state of the sector and our industry and what issues they were facing. And initially it was just how do we get research funded? Then it became how do we regulate these novel technologies because we don't know fully the applications, bioethics ramifications. And then it became, okay, now products are available. How do we pay for them? So what type of reimbursement, schemes and frameworks are needed, and how do you evaluate the value proposition for patients, for payers? So I've just had a really blessed uh, journey along the way. Never thought I would be a daughter of the biotech revolution. And then I actually came to ACS for personal reasons because my family's been impacted by cancer.
Yeah, so when I was doing my research, I did pick up on that. So, so your mom passed from colon cancer, right? So sorry.
Yeah, and she was the first. So that's the irony, right? I'm working in a very dynamic and prolific and profitable industry. And sadly, she was scared to go see her doctor because she was uninsured at the time and worried about what the costs would be. And so she was waiting for Medicare. Since then we've had 14 battles, 7 different types of cancer. So I came to American Cancer Society actually because I couldn't pick any other cancer charity without feeling like I was going to leave somebody behind or disrespect them. And then we have survivors, we have breast cancer in my family, and then we also have brain cancer in my family. So these weird disparities, even within one family, based on what type of cancer, where you lived, what your insurance was like, what your language abilities were like, it's just a microcosm of what the country's experiencing overall. We talk about all the innovation in cancer, but it's actually only American Cancer Society I found that really was cracking the nut when it came to health equity and reducing disparities. And so I just started off volunteering, and then I ended up becoming chair of the area board and then on the national board of our advocacy affiliate when the opportunity to come and lead impact investing tapped me on the shoulder, and I just couldn't resist. So this is a dream job every day. It's a privilege and an honor to do this work.
So in terms of your career, after
Yeah.
college, like how did you get started and the different roles that you held throughout the way?
Yeah, yeah. So when I first graduated from college, I had an undergrad in biology, BS in biology, English literature. And at that time, most of the jobs were in academia. You would be a professor or you'd go into graduate school or medical school. And at the time, I had an amazing advisor at MIT because I was so interested in more the issues. I mean, I think I have a molecular biologist mind, but at the systems and the organization and market level. And so long story short, I asked, well, why does it take 3 years to do an ocean engineering PhD, but 7 years to do a molecular biology PhD? And he says, oh, that's about funding. And then it's about who tells you you can and can't do stuff. Oh, that's about regulatory. So he's like, well, have you considered public policy? So I ended up doing my graduate studies at Harvard at the Kennedy School, focusing on science policy, because at the time, healthcare policy was mostly focused on financing, so healthcare finance. And and then moved into industry. I worked for a small biotech company at the time focused on rare diseases called Genzyme, and also had the opportunity to do international business development for them. And that exposed me to economic development. I worked for 6 years for the UK government and then came back and led international government affairs and global market access policy programs at Genzyme, helping to get key innovation and regulatory policies passed around the world for biotech. And then went back to large pharma at AstraZeneca, led science affairs, got my research roots back, and then ended up in startup because I really loved the entrepreneurship angle.
You talked about how you ended up working in or volunteering for the American Cancer Society, and then through that led you to BrightEdge. Now, so talk about the history of BrightEdge. Like, has it been an organization that was already in existence? Like, how did all that come together?
Yeah, and something that I'm really proud to say I had a part in shaping. So BrightEdge did exist before I came into this role. The national board and the senior executives at American Cancer Society had seen other disease foundations like Cystic Fibrosis Foundation start direct investment programs. And so that was the initial premise was there's a lot of deal activity in oncology, and we know something about cancer. Let's invest. And let's use donor dollars to engage with the venture capital community. And so that was what we inherited was more of a financially oriented model, which was to generate alternative income profits for the American Cancer Society to supplement our grassroots fundraising, which you see in 5,000 communities, walks, galas, all the things that build strong, resilient communities that we should still do, but not depend on for the income to run the country's largest non-governmental grant funding, to continue to do all of the safety net services like free lodging, free rides. Um, when I came in, though, I really felt that American Cancer Society was missing a huge strategic component, which was how do we position BrightEdge so that it is completely paying homage to our full mission. At the time, we were only investing in therapeutics. And then also, how do we leverage our relationships with the Discovery Research Organization, because we have 25,000 grantees, 1,500 institutions, 53 Nobel laureates. We weren't working with them. And then on the back end, because we were the publisher of the cancer facts and figures, we were the most trusted provider of cancer information by patients. We had this amazing advocacy organization. We weren't working with them to help pave way, de-risk the market, and learn from what is so broken, right, in cancer care today to be a discovery engine for future solutions. So both of those things resulted in BrightEdge reemerging as an intentional impact investor. We are also now formalized with American Cancer Society, so we're part of the responsible investment strategy. ACS does not invest in tobacco, obviously, because it causes cancer. And we are the mission forward investor, and we have the access to the VC allocation of the investment pool, supplemented by restricted donor dollars to directly invest in oncology-focused private cancer startups.
Right, so that's different, right? Like most VCs, they have their LPs that are providing the money to invest for their portfolio that over 10 years will create these hopefully outcomes that are favorable. But for BrightEdge, it's very different where the donors are, I'm putting air quotes like LPs, yet there's no, return on capital. It's all those returns are back reinvested.
That's right. That's right. And the invest so both, right? So the donations that come in, which today typically come in as grants, and in the ACS model would go back out as grants, or they would be spent at the program level. BrightEdge donors, and that's our founder circle members, and we love them because they're people who are really one, they themselves they're really bright, they're great thought partners, and they've helped us fill in those gaps that I talked about around innovation, around impact. But what they have is a business mindset around the way their philanthropy dollars should work. And so they actually want those dollars to grow and to scale. And they like the idea of research that's happening in a business environment. And they like the idea that incentives are aligned and it's going to drive performance, right? And that the money would come back. So, yes, you're correct that today it's donor dollars. The donors come in as Founder Circle members, and all of the proceeds from our exits go back to make the fund evergreen. And when we reach a $100 million fund size, then the plan is to trigger what we call a dividend back to American Cancer Society. So every year there would be a percentage of annual realized returns that ACS would be granted by BrightEdge, even though we're wholly owned by BrightEdge. So it becomes a flywheel and a more sustainable way of financing and funding ACS's mission.
I hope you are enjoying this interview. Just a brief word from our sponsor. As a longtime champion in the local startup ecosystem, Silicon Valley Bank supports innovative companies with the solutions and financing they need through every stage of growth. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. So the fund, I don't know if this figure's right, so please correct me, but from your most recent report, it was an $80.3 million fund,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
which is amazing. And
That
there's
was from last year.
16 portfolio companies. Okay, so yeah, as of last year. So 16 portfolio companies, and that's across lots of different categories, right?
Correct, right. That entire cancer care continuum. I mean, I think in total we've done now 21 investments because we're further along in 2024 now. We
Mhm.
actually this year celebrated our sixth and our seventh exits, which is pretty significant for, right? Some folks would call us an emerging fund. And we invest out of the ACS Impact Venture Fund. So BrightEdge is the team and the function at ACS. And then we make investments either directly from our balance sheet for early stage innovation opportunities, and then through the ACS Impact Venture Fund, AIVF. But our seventh exit was a great illustration of the model really blooming, right? So we invested in a small molecule brain cancer company called Modify. Two of the scientific founders were at Yale, and they were ACS grantees. We got involved very early at the seed stage, which was also a pivot once I came into this role to move earlier because we found we could have more participation and more involvement with the company to help them because when we came in late, a lot of those decisions had been made and we were just a name on a cap table. And then the company was recently acquired. Modify was recently acquired by Merck, which is a large pharma company. So higher likelihood that that product's going to go through late stage development and make it to patients. Just so happened that on the Merck side, there was also an ACS grantee alum. So, all of this happening, showing our ecosystem activating, and then also showing the market valuing the quality of research and the opportunity in a tough cancer type, right? Like nobody was touching brain cancer before. So that's impact on multiple levels. And we would call that the triple bottom line, which is you pack some great patient-centered companies, you make returns, financial and on mission, and then those funds go back to support ACS, but also anyone who's touched this deal and who sees it, hopefully they will have education and confidence to themselves be more impactful in the way that they're investing.
Now, how are you evaluating your investments? Like, how do you decide ultimately to make an investment? I saw there's the Cancer Impact Investment Framework, so I wanted to learn more about that.
Yeah, so that is our proprietary impact investment framework. It's a tool that we use both in pre-investment as well as for monitoring the investment. So when we claim to be anyone who claims or wants to be an impact investor, but you have to be intentional. So you have to really put out there what is your theory of change, and you have to be able to measure it. Otherwise, you can't claim to be impact. And so the impact investment framework uses our 10 mission priority areas. Like we talk about that ending cancer as we know it for everyone. We had to transpose those to 10 investable categories. So diagnostics, therapeutics are just two of the 10. We would get excited about technologies that help optimize treatment, that make them safer, infrastructure, clinical trials, even technologies that reduce patient hardship, right? So those are all investable categories. And in each one of those, we would have an investment strategy based on the type of company, the risk. And Cancer Impact Investment Framework allows us to assess the proposed impact from that technology for a particular patient population or a cancer type. And that's how we're able to, at a portfolio level, measure that the AIVF portfolio has the potential to touch 3.5 million patients. And also about 38% of the companies have a dedicated strategy or approach for underserved populations. And so investors can understand, um, the non-financial performance alongside the financial performance and have more confidence in leaning into these types of companies because they can see the impact along with the financials.
And it just seems like the, your organization's continuing to foster the ecosystem. Like you have an entrepreneurs program, there's the Lida Hill Donation Acceleration Hub. So these are various initiatives that are continuing to foster the ecosystem to hopefully create, more companies to help tackle this mission.
Absolutely. And that's where, just like we were talking about what makes us an impact of it, like there's smart money in the room, the scientists, there might be dumb money in the room, the people who follow. Like we would be the wise money in the room, meaning we can validate the problem set. We know a lot about where are there cancer disparities. We know a lot about the cancer biology, and we know what patients, really need a boost to be able to have the same outcomes as other cancer patients, and how to move the needle overall. So I think that is why American Cancer Society is showing up not just as a regular investor, being an LP in someone else's fund, but doing this directly is the right thing to do, right? That's what our donors want, how they want us to show up. When it comes to those earlier stage companies, we also wanted to be really specific about, well, what were their needs? And in the case of scientific, discovery-led companies, first-time founders, they needed advisory, they needed mentorship, they needed access to networks for future investors. And the Texas Accelerator is a great example where we had data that showed that our grantees in some parts of the country didn't have the same opportunity as grantees on the West Coast or on the East Coast. And so we're going into Texas now with a different mindset of how do we help them really harness their strengths locally, generate, more momentum, and then also bring our national network, to bear. And then lastly, we'll be announcing a third accelerator in digital health. And there we may glean some of the learnings from those other two accelerators, but honestly, tech companies have a completely different set of needs. It may be what is cancer specific in a nutrition, solution. What is cancer, what cancer patients need when they think of getting care at home, and then partnerships with health systems early on to help prove some of those hypotheses may be the way that we should show up for digital health companies instead of helping them cross the translational research valley of death. So you're just seeing ACS being just as purposeful in the financial investment as we are in the strategic capital that we're putting behind those programs.
That's amazing. So it's just like this is why I love doing this podcast because like you get to hear the scale that you guys are operating. It's just amazing. Do you know where that accelerator will be located, or is it remote, or?
So that's going to be US wide. I believe it's only US wide, yeah, US wide, which is still huge. We are going to announce our delivery partner, Scale Health, and they have great experience working also with the Chief Hospital Information Officer network. So we believe that in this situation, a little different than our entrepreneurs program, which is mostly diagnostics and therapeutics, where we had very deep bench strength when it came to um, academic research professors, company founders. We didn't necessarily have that same granting footprint in the tech space. And so we knew partnering might be more strategic and might be more appropriate for the way that we would engage with the digital health community. But that will be US wide. Applications will be opening up soon and it will run April through October in 2025. We're really, really excited. And the focus, I think, is on social isolation, nutrition, and financial barriers.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of well, especially like first-time entrepreneurs, maybe they have IP, they're a scientist, they've never raised capital before, and it seems like a very overwhelming process. So what advice would you have for first-time founders that are about to embark on that journey? Like, how do they get on the radar of someone like you? What makes you take that first meeting? What do you expect out of that meeting to then take the second step?
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say, and we're also a startup too. Like if you think of we're a startup within a large um large public charity and we also go out and fundraise. But I would just say, know your audience, right? Know how you're going to solve the problem that they've also defined. Put as much effort in the problem definition and validation as you do in pitching the solution and really be clear about what the proceeds are going to be used for, because that I think is where you're inviting also advice early on in those early discussions, because some of the investors have actually seen this show before, and they might be able to help you in the context of raising capital, even if they don't decide to invest in you.
And are those the, like, I was going to ask, like, what are the most common challenges? Kind of like you've seen multiple companies, whether if they're investments or non, that is there a common theme that you see where they may get tripped up?
Yeah, I would say that this assumption that science sells, that because something is novel and new, that they can price it at whatever they would like, and they're getting now some pushback there with even large pharma who would question whether or not it's a viable commercial opportunity for them. Um, I would say that you've got a savvier investor base now who will be asking some of those downstream questions around, well, what does reimbursement look like? What's your target product profile? Who's going to be your, target audience, your beachhead audience? And then how are you going to refine and evolve this over time? So I would really encourage companies to actually be pragmatic in the short term around what the path is to market and then be visionary about what the future state of cancer care looks like, because when we go to invest and we have a very tenured a flagship scientific advisory council, and when we pulled them together we were actually like, not that we didn't need their leads and their advice on how to invest, but we were like, you guys are here to help us anticipate what the future state of cancer care should be. And then it's our job to find the types of companies that can deliver on that vision that then also are going to be profitable, in the short term. But we don't want to just pile on, right, in really competitive, well-served markets and opportunities. We want to be really bold and essentially hack these bigger system level problems, population problems, by backing the best talent and tech in a traditional investment model so that we can solve not only, right, clinical medicinal problems, but we can solve social problems at scale. So that's the underlying agenda at BrightEdge, whether it's addressing, investor appetite for risk, whether it's growing the impact economy, unlocking impact ESG, capital allocation, like those are all things that we are just as excited about um, compared to finding a cool deal, right? That makes the change more durable and more scalable.
And obviously, this is a regulated industry. So, how much does the FDA factor into the investment decision, and obviously the entrepreneur guiding through that process?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Like that, I mean, for us, especially those of us who invest in therapeutics, that's a no-brainer, meaning that that's non-negotiable. But we are also excited about alternative site of care. We're excited about ways that the patient can be more empowered to take charge of their care, take charge of their own, right? Food is medicine, so that is one of the most democratizing therapeutics out there. If you think of the ability to prevent or also even enhance cancer treatment outcomes by just what foods you eat, how much sleep you get. But I still think that the core product development pathway is going to be determined by FDA regulatory frameworks. And so getting early mentors and advisors and thinking through the scenarios is absolutely, absolutely critical.
Now, through your lens, like addressing health equity, like what are you seeing out there as far as helping, bring this cutting edge care to underserved communities? Like what programs or like what are you seeing out there to address that problem?
Yeah. So it's interesting. This is something that our cancer impact investment team, the framework team, is looking at is a health equity classification system because sometimes companies don't even know that they have the potential to address health equity or health inequities, right? And so if that's the case, and we as an impact investor help them become more fluent and then support them in those micro decisions that they make, whether it's recruiting more diverse clinical trials participants, or thinking of a particular cancer type that has a strong um, uh, uh, genomic or ethnic component, that disadvantages certain populations, or, thinking of some of the social determinants of health. I think that that is part of that investor contribution that we can bring to deepen impact. But I would say that, health equity is our alpha. It's not something that we would say, oh, you must be a health equity company in order to be um, a BrightEdge portfolio company. But if you have the opportunity to advance health equity through your product design and your business model, we're here to support you, because that's ultimately what we want to see everyone do more of. But yeah, if you were purely a health equity company, actually, most companies could not identify solely as that. They had to identify as a thing, right? A
Mhm.
technology, a diagnostic, and then health equity was the second thing that they checked as something they wanted to advance.
Okay, so you don't have a crystal ball, so we all understand that. We talked about AI, but
Yep.
are there other future trends in oncology that, give hope, right? That, the patient outcomes will be, we'll see a brighter future ahead as, the mission you're trying to solve.
Yeah. I think we touched on several of them. Obviously, AI is a emerging and enabling technology. We definitely know that the majority of cancer patients receive care not in academic centers of excellence, but in the community setting. And so thinking both about how do we support the strengthening of those centers to deliver comprehensive cancer care, but also what about alternative sites of care, getting cancer care at home. Um, I think the 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 investing in non-clinical solutions, so social determinants of health, some of those other things that we talked about that our third accelerator is going to focus on, people who live alone, we found through American Cancer Society's research, have a 1.3 times higher likelihood of not surviving cancer. So social isolation and loneliness is a real thing. Um, and then it also is, how do we be as specific as possible around addressing population, system level, um, and market level drivers of disparities. And that might not look anything like a molecule. It could look
Yeah.
like a completely different investment strategy. So I think aligning incentives is what will really reshape patient outcomes, including the incentives of the patients themselves to adhere to care, right? And those are other types of companies and technologies that can support.
If you were like sitting there, like you're seeing such a wide range of possibilities, yet maybe there's something in your head that you're like, I wish entrepreneurs would spend more time addressing X. What would X be?
So the one thing, because we deal at these system levels, I would say that any entrepreneur has the opportunity to be thinking about their wider platform, right? Who is their company going to be in the long run, and how are they going to catalyze broader change beyond what their one product might look like upon launch. And then entrepreneurs tend to be, right, more they are leaders of their organizations, but how do they show up in their communities? How are they really being conveners and agents of change by hosting, thought partnership and thought leadership dialogue? Because so many of them are developing products for markets that are broken or don't even exist yet. And so they need to be thinking both internally within their company, how they show up as a leader, but also externally, they need to be thinking how they show up as a change maker.
All right, so some quick hitting questions here. So, three apps you can't live without. Can't be Slack, email, or calendar.
Yes, I would say my music app, my weather app, and I'm still use SMS messenger messaging.
Me too. Me too.
Yep.
What do you use for music and weather? Is it just the native Apple or and Spotify or?
We because I live in New England and weather changes a lot, and everything that you do from like even what base layer of underwear you're going to wear to what types of shoes, you got to really know what time the weather is going to switch on you. So I use the New England Cable News weather app because it's a lot more accurate. And for music, I just use the Apple app, but I do have several pinned channels on Pandora that I listen to.
Very cool. Do you have a
Yeah.
good podcast or book recommendation for entrepreneurs?
I'm gonna go old school. I still love Lean Startup. I go back to that all the time. Even
Mhm.
for our work at BrightEdge, we talk about pilot, pivot, or persevere. I think you need to be really, really nimble and not build it and they will come. So that continues to be a favorite. And I still love the disciplined entrepreneurship Bill Aulet book. I just think sometimes we need that Candyland map of what are we doing today, what are we building towards, and where are we in the journey?
They just published an updated version of that book, and VentureFizz is in it.
Hey, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
I was like, yeah, they reached out like, hey, just want to let you know, and we're in like like their guide, their online guide to of helping think about the
You should
talent side
feel
of what we do.
great about that.
I do. I think it's amazing. So it was like one of those things where they reached out, and I'm like, okay, thank you.
Awesome.
So,
Great. So now you've been
yeah,
etched into the pyramid walls of entrepreneurship. Like that's
yes,
like
exactly. So, what do you like to do for fun outside of work?
Yeah, I love the mountains, so we love to ski, and we're also big hikers. So any chance I can get outside, I like to be outside, and forest bathe or be skiing down a ski slope.
Very cool. Well, Alice, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through your professional journey. Obviously, all the great work that you are doing and your team at BrightEdge, and obviously the greater work that the American Cancer Society is doing as a whole. And thanks for all the advice.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. Keep up the great work.